This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The second siege-breaking boat arrived at Gaza from the Cypriot port of Larnaca. The boat carried 17 international activists from 11 European and other countries. The boat brought half a ton of medicine and humanitarian aid.
Our colleague Nur al-Sadek, who accompanied the boat as it left from the port of Larnaca, will report on the difficulties the activists faced during their voyage. Our colleague Heba Akila will report on how the boat was perceived in Gaza. Let us watch.
Passengers on the Hope boat, which left the Cypriot port of Larnaca, faced a great deal of hardship during the sailing trip. What made the trip even more dangerous was the boat's small size, which made it vulnerable to the high waves of the stormy night. The challenge of the long night, however, allowed the boat's passengers to forget the risks that awaited them in the morning, of which they had been informed over the past weeks.
1700 hours, Tuesday, yesterday evening. Over.
It is an Israeli naval ship asking about the boat's identity, which they were told about 3 days ago. However, it seems that the early notification was not enough to stop Israeli harassments, which in some cases created fear among the passengers, which they were only able to overcome with their strong determination.
The suffering was big, but is more big.
كانت المعاناة كبيرة بالفعل خلال الليل. There was great suffering during the night, but our joy once we arrived in Gaza was even greater. We are here on behalf of many Italians who are in solidarity with Gaza's residents.
لا الأجواء الماطرة ولا التهديدات الإسرائيلية تمكنت من إعاقة.
Neither the rain nor the Israelis' threats have managed to prevent the Hope ship, which broke the siege for the second time, from arriving at the port of Gaza. The joy felt by the 27 activists, once they arrived in Gaza, can't be described in words. Their determination to break the siege is the motivational force behind this second trip.
دافعاً لتكرار هذه التجربة.
We are willing to repeat this experience for a third, fourth, and fifth time. Regardless of what Israel does, we are still ready to come back. We believe in what we do. What is happening to our people in Gaza is inhumane. War crimes are occurring here, and someone must do something.
The small size of the boat and the limited number of passengers did not undermine the importance of the trip or those who took part in it. Some of the passengers are Nobel Peace Prize winners and others are human rights activists.
They saved their lives. I saw their suffering on the ship. I saw the great deal of suffering they went through on this trip. They risked their lives to show solidarity with the Palestinian people. This is what everyone should do so we can end this tragic chapter of the Israeli oppression against the Palestinian people.
This trip has a symbolic importance. It confirms our right to use these regional waters. Next, there will be several ships from Arab, Muslim, and other countries. Also, the airspace must be used as well. We insist on our right to use the airspace by having planes land in Gaza. We must end the siege.
This ship, which broke the siege for the second time, carries new hope to Gaza's residents.
This mission was not easy for those who embarked on this trip, but their belief in the nobility of the mission has enabled them to face all involved risks.
Heba Akela,
Amir Sadek,
Al Jazeera,
from the port of Gaza.
As The universities continue to threaten to strike Sunday's opening of the new academic year over budget cuts. The Knesset Finance Committee convened today for a stormy session to which Education Minister Yuli Tamir and heads of the universities were also invited. Tamir lashed out at the Treasury for its intransigence, as she called it, and said it would be a tragedy if the semester does not start on time, since the education system needs stability. Prime Minister Olmert has now stepped in and summoned Bar-On, Tamir and the university heads for an urgent meeting tomorrow to try to resolve the funding crisis before Sunday. Opposition leader Benjamin Netanyahu said today in the Knesset that if the Likud forms the next government, the education portfolio will be given to a member of his party. Netanyahu was speaking at a memorial ceremony for the late cabinet minister Rehavam Ze'evi, who was murdered by Palestinians 7 years ago. Netanyahu said the Israel Defense Forces should be respected just as Ze'evi respected the IDF, referring to the violent curses directed at IDF soldiers by Hebron settlers earlier this week. Netanyahu said the culprit should be punished with the full force of the law. Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni said at the ceremony that Ze'evi symbolized love for the land of Israel, something she said that unites the entire political establishment. The High Court of Justice ruled today that two extreme right-wing activists may hold a protest march in the Arab city of al-Fahim in the Galilee. The court ruled over objections by police that Itamar Ben-Gvir and Baruch Marzel may be joined by hundreds of supporters and can carry Israeli flags, but no other banners. Arab MKs were furious over the decision.
I think it's outrageous provocation by those guys who are demanding deportation and transfer of Arab citizens of the State of Israel from Fahim and other cities. I hope that this provocation will not cause instability and riots which will harm the public order. Those who got and took this decision should bear the responsibility.
Palestinian mother Jaber Wishah was honored by the Lebanese Committee for the Political Prisoners in Lebanon, a step in the path of liberating the political prisoners from Israeli jails.
She was not deterred by the exhaustion she endured while waiting at the Rafah crossing or the difficult journey to Lebanon. She only cared to meet the beloved liberated prisoners and embrace them in Lebanon as she did while they were held in Israeli jails. The Mujahida, or freedom fighter, Jaber Wishah al-Ed, said that she will not ignore her national duty regardless of the sacrifices that she may have to give. She wants to send a message of defiance to the aggressor's prisons.
I faced suffering, exhaustion, and difficulties at the border so that I could visit liberated prisoners and congratulate their parents. Lebanese political prisoner Samir Kuntar was sentenced to 400 years in prison, but was released. I want to thank Syrian television and send my regards to the liberated Palestinian prisoners in Lebanon. I'm a Palestinian mother who came to visit her sons in Lebanon.
Truly, these are beautiful moments. It is hard to express one's feelings in words. It is a very beautiful feeling. I remember when I was in prison, I was thinking that one day I would be released and see my family and my mother. This time, however, it is the opposite. She came from prison, all of Palestine is a prison, to visit us. Truly, these feelings can't be expressed in words.
Jaber Wishah was honored today by the Lebanese Committee for Political Prisoners. She met her freed sons who confirmed that they would continue on the path towards liberating Arab political prisoners from all Israeli prisons, regardless of how long the occupation lasts. The resistance will liberate these heroes one day.
God willing, we will continue on the path to liberation until all of our political prisoners are released by the determination of heroes like President Bashar al-Assad and Hezbollah Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah. We assure our political prisoners that we will not forget them. They are in our hearts and minds.
The families of political prisoners wanted me to tell Hassan Nasrallah that we put our hope in God's hands and in him. May God release the female and male prisoners. We have 11,000 prisoners in Israeli jails. Are they all terrorists? I swear to God they are not terrorists. It is their right to be free, and we will not stop fighting for our rights until we regain them. We will fight until the very last Palestinian is freed.
Once again, Hezbollah's Secretary General Hassan Nasrallah promised not to let political prisoners remain in the occupation's prisons. He made this promise as the mother of Mujahideen Jaber visited Lebanon in solidarity with her liberated sons and to share their happiness. Jaber has always been supportive of them while they were imprisoned in Israeli jails. Sana Alawiya, Syrian Arab television, from the headquarters of the Lebanese Committee for Political Prisoners, Beirut's southern suburbs.
الاتفاقية الأمنية بين العراق والولايات المتحدة تتقاذفها مصالح كل طرف وتوجهها.
The security agreement between the U.S. and Iraq is being manipulated by both sides and is overshadowed by hidden factors and scores under the pretext of a long-term strategic deal. Washington doesn't want to approve any amendments on the security agreement before evaluating the minor changes proposed by the Iraqi government. The authorities of Baghdad were forced to add the amendments due to mounting pressure from the various political and parliamentary blocs. According to knowledgeable sources, the proposed amendments pertain to Iraq's sovereignty and national interests.
One cancellation after another and one round of talks after another. This is how the Iraqi political spectrum looked before Baghdad was able to finalize the proposed amendments on its security agreement with the U.S. The title name of the security agreement has been shortened from a long-term to a withdrawal agreement because it specifies a timetable schedule for the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Iraq. Meanwhile, Iraqi officials say that the road ahead is still blurry, which may hamper efforts aimed at signing the final draft agreement.
This agreement comes within the context of ongoing negotiations. Up to this minute, the government has not announced that the negotiations have ended and for the political blocs to start expressing their opinions.
These are fundamental amendments which aim to achieve full Iraqi sovereignty over its own soil. They also intend to enable Iraq to command military operations, as well as specify a real timetable schedule for the withdrawal of U.S. forces from Iraq.
No deadline has been given for the completion of the amendments, which include those pertaining to the issues of immunity, mail, and troop withdrawal. Meanwhile, there appears to be no unanimous decision on whether to accept or reject the security agreement.
Some political blocs, including ours, believe that the current political situation and the U.S. presence in Iraq don't permit us to sign an agreement like this.
We at the Kurdistan Alliance believe that this security agreement is very important for the security, stability, and sovereignty of Iraq.
According to some Iraqi politicians, the security deal between the U.S. and Iraq is a temporary agreement, despite the fact that it was described as long-term. The agreement will outline a mechanism that will help reorganize the work, activities, and movements of the U.S. forces in Iraq. The U.S. military in Iraq has not been given the green light to discuss the details of the agreement. Based on the given scenarios, the security agreement still requires analysis, as confirmed by political analysts. Any U.S. withdrawal from Iraq may bring the situation back to what it used to be before the war, and any decision to keep U.S. forces in Iraq means that the situation will stay as is. From Madar Program, Duha Al-Haddad, Abu Dhabi Channel, Baghdad.
Today, the region of Baluchistan, southwest of Pakistan, met its fate. This news comes after an earthquake measuring 6.2 on the Richter scale, which hit the region of Baluchistan. According to a Pakistani government official, more than 160 people were killed in the tremor. The death toll is expected to rise as relief workers are still scrambling to reach some of the hard-hit areas. More than 8 villages in the district of Ziyarat, east of the provincial capital of Quetta, have suffered substantial damage. Fatima Tawil reports.
ناموا على سكون ليل باكستان البارد ثم ما لبثوا أن استيقظوا على زلزال مدمر.
They slept through the quiet and cool night of Pakistan, but woke to the scene of a destructive earthquake. An earthquake measuring 6.2 on the Richter scale has hit the area of Quetta in the province of Baluchistan, southwest of Pakistan. Whoever was able to make it ran to the streets, carrying blankets to help protect them from the freezing temperatures during this time of year. However, many residents were not as lucky, as dozens were killed, and dozens of others were wounded underneath the rubble.
مركز الزلزال حدد على بعد نحو 70 كيلومترا.
The epicenter of the earthquake was registered in an area located 70 kilometers northeast of Quetta and 185 kilometers southeast of the Afghan border. The majority of the dead were killed due to the collapse of their houses in the district of Ziyarat, which is located nearly 50 kilometers east of Quetta. Hundreds of mud houses in 8 Pakistani villages, which couldn't withstand the magnitude of the earthquake, were turned to rubble.
إلى أنقاض وفيما دفع الجيش الباكستاني بتعزيزاته إلى المناطق.
Meanwhile, the Pakistani army sent reinforcement to the hard-hit areas. In addition, relief agencies are trying to reach other villages in the Baluchistan region, which has for long been considered to be a tourist attraction.
ولعل هذا الإقليم قد استرجع بعضا من مأساة سابقة.
In 1935, the area of Quetta in the province of Baluchistan was rocked by a massive earthquake, killing 30,000 people.
آنذاك منطقة كويتا.
In an unprecedented position, Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed yesterday to open a dialogue with the Taliban movement. The agreement came at the end of a meeting between officials from both sides. In addition, more than 50 tribal leaders attended the meeting. The meeting was held in the Pakistani capital of Islamabad and will continue over the next 2 days. The agreement calls for opening a dialogue with armed Taliban fighters in an attempt to end the growing violence in the tribal regions along the Pakistan-Afghan border.
Pakistan and Afghanistan agreed on measures to communicate with armed groups of the Taliban movement. This comes at the end of talks held by the tribal councils, which lasted for 2 days. Former Afghan Foreign Minister Abdullah said that the communications will include Taliban groups in Afghanistan and Pakistan.
The agreement and consensus between the leaders of 2 tribes in Pakistan and Afghanistan in the tribal Loya Jirga meeting, which was held in Islamabad, comes on the sidelines of the fast-developing expansion of the hardline Taliban movement in the region. The activities of this meeting ended with approving decisions to put in place the necessary mechanisms to solve the problem, which everyone agrees is difficult and complicated.
It is a very complicated one.
No doubt the security situation in this area is complicated. The solutions are hard to achieve. It requires that we have determination, honor our commitments, and exert efforts to reach a resolution to this dilemma.
At this meeting, they agreed to form a joint tribal committee made up of both the Pakistani and Afghani sides to act immediately with members of the armed Taliban in both countries to convince them to lay down their weapons and resort to dialogue. This decision was made in order to reduce the effects of the security crisis, which has weakened the security of the region and its development for a very long time.
Upholding supremacy of both countries' constitutions.
في كل ما يضمن سيادة السور البلدين الأبواب مفتوحة.
For those holding the supremacy of all countries' constitutions, the door is open. They should seize this opportunity and the results of the tribal meetings so as to further boost such efforts.
إن أهم القرارات التي تم التوصل إليها بعد يومين من المداولات بين رجال القبائل الباكستانية والأفغانية
The most important decision that was reached after 2 days of discussions between Pakistani and Afghan tribal leaders under the auspices of the governments of both countries was the agreement to use the carrot policy, which consecutive Pakistani governments have used, while continuing to use the stick policy against those who are loath to ride the wing of peace and fight and create bloodshed. The optimism and hope created at this tribal meeting was tempered by the continued U.S. military strikes on Pakistani and Afghan soil. Despite U.S. guarantees to honor the sovereignty of Pakistan, at least 21 people were killed, with dozens more killed while the meeting was taking place. Analysts believe that this does nothing more than increase the level of tension between Pakistan and the United States. It also reduces opportunities, hope in dialogue and peace, and increases the spread of radicalism and extremism that comes as a result of growing anger from people of the region against Pakistani, U.S. and Afghan forces equally. Zuhair Ashraf Jamal, Saudi TV, Islamabad. The head of Kuwait's National Assembly, Jassim Khirafi, adjourned today's parliament session after a strong verbal altercation ensued between the government and the parliament over the issue of biduns. Saad Ajami has the details in the following report.
This is Arada Square, across the street from the headquarters of the National Assembly. Dozens of Baduns, or people without a designated citizenship, gathered to rally the support of members of the parliament and urge them to help protect their civil rights. Meanwhile, the Kuwaiti parliament is scheduled to vote on a bill calling for the reinstatement of the Baduns Parliamentary Committee, which was dismissed from the assembly last week.
Is there anyone who is willing to die for the sake of his country? We will not desert our nation. With God as our witness, we will not desert you, and we will stand by you.
The protesters were prevented from entering the parliament compound to attend the session. The vast majority of parliament members voted in favor of reinstating the assembly committees, including that of the Baduns. As soon as the government requested that the assembly postpone the voting for 2 weeks, most parliament members lashed out. The parliament says that the government's request violates the integrity of the council because the committees are part of the National Assembly, not the government. Amidst the exchange of words and the heated argument, the head of the National Assembly adjourned the session after failing to maintain order.
The government asked for a 2-week extension because they want to plan their next move. The government always works to derail the work of the National Assembly. It wants 2 weeks to disrupt the committee's issue. It also wants to ally with and elect whomever it wishes.
On the other hand, some members of the parliament criticize their colleagues for not granting the government its request for extension.
We don't oppose any committee. There are 4 committees, which include a women's and a residents' committee. I hope the topic will not be blown out of proportion. The discussion is about implementing and respecting the integrity of the Assembly's list.
With the government's position on one side and the parliament's position on the other, it is likely that tomorrow's parliament session will be as intense and fiery as today's session. Amidst calls by Member of Parliament Ahmad Belafi for the questions of the head of the Minister's Council, as well as the controversy surrounding today's session, it has become clear that all political roads are leading to deterioration. Saad Ajami, Al Arabiya, Kuwait.
The level of hard currency in Pakistan's Reserve Bank is getting critically low, despite the IMF's willingness to lend it money. As a result, local Pakistani currency is continuously deteriorating, which means that Pakistan is edging closer to bankruptcy, especially if the Friends of Pakistan group does not provide the necessary aid in their upcoming meeting in Abu Dhabi next week. Mayub Khadar reports from Islamabad.
The sharp decrease in hard currencies in Pakistan's Federal Reserve Bank led to unprecedented decrease in the exchange value of the Pakistani rupee. This is how one can describe the financial crisis in Pakistan, which worsened due to the global financial crisis. Pakistan may declare bankruptcy if it does not receive $5 billion on time.
Pakistan cannot wait for long.
Pakistan Pakistan can't wait for long. We must act as a government within 30 days, or else the decrease in Pakistan's hard currencies and the exchange value of the rupee will lead the country to a critical period.
Before borrowing money from the IMF, which the Pakistani opposition rejects completely, Prime Minister Yusuf Rida Gilani is looking towards the Friends of Pakistan group, which will meet in Abu Dhabi next month. He hopes that his country will receive financial support to ease the liquidity problem and the trade imbalance, at least temporarily.
In addition to the regular inflows,
in addition to previous financial guarantees, Pakistan needs $5 or $6 billion quickly. The next 2 years, specifically starting in July 2010, will be a more critical period. Pakistan will need $12 to $15 billion.
The Pakistani President Asif Ali Zardari returned from China empty-handed, only with promises of future investments. The Pakistani Central Bank tried to ease the concerns over the financial crisis by pumping 180 billion rupees in the commercial banks. Pakistani officials say that they are facing the worst financial crisis in the country's history. They are limited to the option of looking for unconditional foreign aid or borrowing from the IMF. Meanwhile, Pakistan is racing against time, trying to pass the financial crisis with minimum losses. Mayoub Khadr, Dubai.
وبعيدا عن الأزمات يلقى مشروع التاكسي النسائي في العاصمة.
The all-female taxi service, which was launched in the Iranian capital Tehran, is increasingly gaining momentum. The project has opened a new window of opportunity for Iranian women who can now join the taxi service. Meanwhile, Iranian women, both drivers and commuters, were among the first people to welcome the taxi idea.
In a city like Tehran, where the number of women amounts to nearly 49% of the total population, the idea of launching an all-female taxi service seems rather practical. The project comes at a time when Iranian society has begun to ease some of its traditions and social laws, in parallel with other Islamic societies in the region.
We conducted a study and found that women account for more than 50% of the total numbers of commuters in Tehran. We started to reach out to those women who showed interest in the taxi project and who were willing to take part in it.
من هنا تبدأ العملية. استقبال اتصالات الزبونات.
In this office, the daily operation begins. A female dispatcher will take calls from prospective customers. Then, she coordinates the deal between the two sides, a female driver and a female customer. Miriam talked to us about her own reasons for choosing this profession, which for a long time has been considered to be a man's job.
I took this job because I like driving. I also want to improve my financial situation.
وللحظات من الانتظار لا بأس بشيء من العناية بالمظهر الخارجي للسيارة.
While waiting outside a customer's home, Miriam tried to clean the exterior of her car. Moments later, Zahra comes out of her home and is driven by Miriam through the busy streets of Tehran to her final destination. Is it hard for a woman to drive a taxi?
بلى إنه عمل صعب للغاية.
Yes, it's very hard work, especially because it's in a city as big and busy as Tehran. But there's a good side to driving a taxi. As a driver, you get to meet people from all walks of life, which gives the job a special attraction.
Iranian women were more receptive than their male counterparts to the idea of launching an all-female taxi service in Tehran.
This service will allow us to travel and go anywhere we want in Tehran. Also, knowing that the driver is a woman, we feel more comfortable and more secure to use the service.
Her mission was accomplished, and Miriam is off to another pickup. From this, Iranian women were able to send a message to the world saying, "We are empowered women." One rule of thumb does exist, however. A male who has reached the age of adulthood cannot use the all-female taxi service. Needless to say, we were able to cut through the red tape in order to prepare this report. Nizar Nadawi, Al-Alam, Tehran.
Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/Mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.